During the early 1990s, Iraq was barely recovering from the Gulf War. There were a lot of people suffering great poverty. There was widespread hunger and a lack of jobs. Ali was a laborer, a man in his mid-30s with a wife and kids. He had nothing to do with the war, but he and his family were hit by hard times. Food was scarce, and he had to get food donated by outsiders. It was tough. One day, someone told him there were employment opportunities in Baghdad, the capital. All he had to do was wait in the marketplace, and people looking for workers may pick him up for odd jobs. Ali was delighted to hear this. The next morning, he bid farewell to his family and hopped onto a bus to take him to the capital. He couldn't believe his luck. After several hours, he reached the marketplace in Baghdad. He was tired and hungry. He saw a lot of people standing under the shades of trees, all looking for any kind of employment. Cars would come and randomly pick up someone and drive off. Others waited patiently in the summer heat. Ali satisfied himself with some water from a fountain that some kind-hearted person had installed so people could quench their thirst there. Some hours passed by. Ali was exhausted. He hoped someone would give him a job so he could send some money to his family. It was hard waiting and not knowing what the future held for him. By mid-afternoon, an SUV drove up and a smartly dressed lady got out. She walked up to Ali. "Are you looking for a labor job?" she asked. "I need help at our house." "I'm at your service, ma'am," he replied. She removed her sunglasses and looked at him keenly. "You will do," she said, motioning for him to accompany her. Ali couldn't believe his good fortune. The lady looked wealthy and would probably pay him well. He got into the passenger seat and she drove her car onto the main road. After about 20 minutes, they reached a villa with an overgrown garden. The lady drove into a garage and got out. Ali stepped out of the car and looked around him. At the doorway stood an elderly lady who looked at Ali and greeted him. The young lady looked at Ali and told him that this was her mother, Najwa. "And I am Rima," she added. "My mother will instruct you on what you have to do." And with that, she walked into the house. Her mother asked Ali a few questions and then told him to clear up the garden. She gave him some water to drink and sat down on a chair by the door. By mid-afternoon, Ali was exhausted. The garden looked neat now, but still there was a lot of work to be done. Najwa entered the house and came out with a tray laden with bread, rice, and chicken. There was a glass of lemonade too, and plenty of water. Ali was glad to have such a wonderful meal. He was famished and longed for some good food. The lady seemed to be generous and caring. She even showed him a room where he could rest and sleep during the night. It was a small place just outside the house. It had air conditioning, a mattress and pillow, and a chair. Ali was content. He was told that he could continue working in the garden till nightfall. The next morning, the lady was out again with tea and bread. She made sure he ate well. Ali noticed the younger lady taking out her car and going to work. She told him he had to wash her car after she returned. "With pleasure," he replied. Najwa took up her place outside the door of the house and sat watching him work. Ali wanted to clean the house as well, but the lady said not now. "We have to discuss your wages," she said. Ali said, "Don't worry, I will take anything." "Do you have a family, wife and kids?" she asked, looking curious. Ali did not want to say he had a family. She might not want a married man with responsibilities and financial needs. He smiled and lied. "No, ma'am, I have only myself to take care of." The lady gave him a big smile. She seemed to like him and his work. This continued for a few days. Ali was given many jobs to do, running errands, watering the garden, washing the big car, but he was never allowed to enter the house. Apparently they had a maid to clean, wash, and cook. One day, after Ali had finished his work cleaning the backyard and washing the car, Najwa called him. She wanted to discuss something very important with him. There were two big chairs near her door, and she motioned for to sit down on one of the chairs. Ali's heart raced. Is this going to be the last day of his work, he wondered. "Look," Najwa said, looking serious. "You know how I like your work, your humility and honesty." Ali smiled. "Thank you, ma'am. Just doing my job the best I can." Najwa looked a bit sad. "You know, I am getting old. Should anything happen to me, my daughter will be all alone. She has no father or siblings, no close relatives. Her father was wealthy and all his money and properties will go to her. I don't trust anyone in this world, but I find you to be upright, honest, and God-fearing." Ali didn't know what to say. "Listen," the old lady continued, "how about you marrying my daughter?" This came as a shock to Ali. Here was a golden proposal, a chance he could not miss. He kept quiet, not knowing how to answer her. "I'll give you till tomorrow evening to think about it," she remarked, noticing he was cautious. But, what are your daughter's thoughts on this?" he asked meekly. The lady stood up. "She finds you handsome, courteous, and good enough to be her husband?" She chuckled. Ali was beside himself with joy. Here was a lifetime opportunity for him to be rich and maybe own his car, house, farm. He was dreaming and went to bed that night with great hopes. The next day he saw Rima outside. She was just getting into her car, and when she saw him, she smiled shyly. He smiled back. He had made his decision. 2 days later, Najwa said some people would come there to finalize the wedding. It was going to be a small affair, an engagement first and the actual wedding by the weekend. She brought out some elegant clothes for him, including a fine cloak fit for a groom and other accessories. Ali's eyes lit up. That evening, they all dressed up in their best clothes. 2 officials came with a register and other document. The engagement was done and there were drinks and snacks to celebrate the occasion. Ali could not believe what was happening. What would his family think? His parents, wife, and relatives? He was told by Najwa to keep this secret because she was afraid her family may cause problems. After the wedding, they would all migrate to another country. Ali was willing to do anything to escape the poverty and hardships he was suffering. He was keen to set himself up and then send money to his wife and children secretly. The next evening, Rima told him to get ready and wear his fine attire, including the cloak, and to go out with her to the gold and jewelry shop. She wanted to buy the dowry and ornaments for the wedding the following week. As he was unable to pay her dowry, she would buy it for him and then he would present it to her. Ali felt shy to accept this arrangement, but Najwa insisted. Ali and Rima got into the SUV and she drove to the gold shop. There were several people around buying things for themselves. Rima thrust a small briefcase into Ali's hands. "Keep this with you," she said. "The money for the gold I'm going to buy is in there." "It has to look as if you are paying," she added. Ali took the briefcase and held it tight. He wondered how much money was inside, but he dared not ask. Rima cautioned him to be careful. "At no time must they suspect that the money is mine. You have to pretend to be a wealthy gentleman." It felt really good to look wealthy and feel he had loads of money. It was really nice of Rima and her mother not to make him feel embarrassed in the gold shop by providing him with branded clothes to wear. They stepped into the shop. The sales assistant smiled at them, welcoming them with a warm, "Good evening, sir and madam." Ali had never been inside a gold shop before, and glittering arrays of rings, bracelets, necklaces, and earrings dazzled him. But he pretended to be a wealthy man, quite used to buying expensive jewelry. They took out trays of rings and bracelets for Rima to look at. She was smiling happily and trying on some of the items. She chose a lot of beautiful pieces, and the sales assistant seemed to flatter her, convincing her to buy this and that and how they suited her perfectly. From time to time she looked at Ali and asked how a ring or bracelet looked on her. "Is it okay to buy this? Does it look nice on my finger?" Ali smiled back, looking nervous but always saying, "It looks great, my dear. Anything looks good on you." After Rima had chosen several rings, 10 bracelets, 3 heavy necklaces, a dozen pairs of ruby-studded earrings, gold chains and brooches, she asked for them to be packaged and put into carry bags. Her bill came to about $5 million, a shocking amount for Ali. The bill slip was on the counter and Rima pushed it to Ali. "Darling," she said, "I will wait in the car while you finish with the payment." With that, she grabbed all the 5 bags of gold items that she had chosen and left the shop. Ali placed the briefcase on the counter and opened it. To his horror, it was empty. He quickly closed it so they would not see there was no money inside. He pretended to look for something in his pocket. He checked to see if Rima had returned, but there was no sign of her. He was beginning to feel a bit hot under the collar and his palms were sweaty. What is taking her so long, he wondered. The salesmen were murmuring to themselves and looking at him. "Can I go out and check?" he ventured to ask. The sales manager, who was sitting at the far end of the shop, appeared, looking grim. "What's the matter?" he asked. "Is there a problem?" Ali said his fiancée had given him the wrong briefcase and she would be returning with the right one soon, or so he hoped. and they waited and waited. Ali was taken inside to the sales manager's office. "Call her," he was told. "I can't," he replied. "I don't have a phone." "What's her number?" "I don't know." The police were called, and Ali had to give them the full story. He was baffled and stressed. They had to take him to Najwa and Rima's villa and found it locked. The lights were all off and the car was gone. The real estate agent, whose office was next door, said the two women had rented the villa for 1 month. Ali was taken into custody pending investigations. A massive search was conducted but yielded no results. All exits and entries were checked. The women had given fake identities at the real estate office. This was a massive gold heist, and the two ladies might be members of a bigger group. After several months, Ali was released as he was just a victim and did not know that he had been manipulated. The ladies were never found.